The 18th dynasty, a new kingdom. When the Egyptians from the south came up to the north and kicked out the invading Hyksos, their founder was Amos I in 1550 BC. In 1415 BC, born to us is Queen Tiye, the mother of Akhenaten and grandmother of King Tut. Some say she's the mother of King Tut, but I go with the assumption that she's the grandmother, as King Tut's skin tone is a bit lighter. She is the child of Yuya and Tuya. Now, there's some debate about Yuya and Tuya that they're both foreigners. Yuya is perhaps from Nubia or Asiatic. We're not quite sure, but I do believe Yuya is a commoner from Nubia. Yuya was a very wealthy man. He served as key advisor to Amenhotep III and held posts such as the king's lieutenant and master of the horse. Some believe that Tuya was Asiatic or Egyptian. Most believe, though, now that she is from an Egyptian noble royal family, and they held high government offices and religious offices. Tiye also has a brother, Anan, who was a high priestess of Amun, so she comes from a very prominent family, even being Nubian or half Nubian, half Kushite. Eventually, Amenhotep III sees the young woman and falls in love with her. Amenhotep III is the 9th prince of the 18th dynasty, and he did something very rarely that no one does. He married a foreigner, not of royal line, and he elevates her to first wife. He loved her very, very much. Here's something we don't see a lot. He actually writes poetry to her, and I'm going to read a piece here. The princess, most praised, the lady of grace, sweet in her love, who fills the palace with her beauty, the region of the north and south, the great wife of the king who loves her, the lady of both lands. T. You can pronounce her name T, Taye, or Tai, but let's go with T just to be safe. Now, when she becomes queen, some things start to change within the royal court. You start to see Nubian fashion starting to show up. You see people wearing the earrings with the little gold chains hanging down, and other aspects of Nubian fashion coming into the Egyptian royal court. Now, Amenhotep does even more drastic things for her. Typically, pharaohs would build temples to various gods, but what he does is he builds her own palace and a white stone temple in Nubia. This is the land of her ancestors, and he even creates an artificial lake and names it Lake T for her. In all aspects of statues, T is seen sitting next to the king, equal in height, with her arm around her, not behind him or in front of him, but beside him. So Amenhotep III brings her up to the equal of him. This is another thing that is never done before. So it seems for over 38 years, Amenhotep's reign, this was his most loved friend, not just his wife. But eventually Amenhotep, he becomes sick. Queen T, she takes care of a lot of royal functions then, and eventually he passes on. Now, after Amenhotep III dies, their son, who comes to be known as Akhenaten, takes over. Now, this is a whole nother video and a long story. Akhenaten is, of course, called the heretic pharaoh. He closes all the other temples, and he only allows the temple of one god to be worshipped, the Aten or the Aten. And this is perhaps the first take at monotheism. That's an argument. But during this, while Akhenaten is focused on social reforms, it is T who handles much of the foreign issues and diplomatic issues within the country. I'm going to read here a passage from the book Black Women in Antiquity by Ivan Van Sertima. After his father's death, Akhenaten was crowned pharaoh, But as a pharaoh, he was a disappointment to the politically minded Queen Mother. Egypt's military might deteriorated to such a point of danger under him that her Asian allies became more fearful than ever. And even though Akhenaten and Nefertiti entertained T with extravagant banquets and built a temple to Aton in her honor, T assessed her son's conduct of foreign affairs realistically. She moved into the vacuum created by his concentration on religious reform and acted for him as Secretary of State. Kings of the Asian client states bypassed him to correspond directly with T to plead for protection. Kings like Tahushwata of Mitanni, who had sent his own beautiful daughter to Amenhotep in token of submission, now sent gifts to the Queen Mother to reaffirm their wish to continue under Egypt's military protectorate. So it seems here that, T was the one who handled most of the foreign affairs. And eventually more sadness comes. Akhenaten passes away early, and it is T and Nefertiti who rule until the young king Tut is of age, and then the throne passes to him. Queen T passes at around 50 years of age, but she is known to be one of the greatest queens of Egypt, if not the greatest queen. Moreover, in her tomb, it was shown that she's an educated woman. She had a library of papyrus scrolls that contained religious, historical, and scientific texts, poetry, and stories. So she must have mastered these contents. She was a very educated woman and respected everywhere. During the critical periods of the 18th dynasty, this queen was a stabilizing force in the nation. The years when her husband's health were declining, the years when Amenhotep took the religious initiative and converted to monotheism and neglected Egypt's foreign affairs, and the years when her youngest grandson, Tutankhamun, reigned. She was the driving force behind keeping the nation together. Now, her bust can be found in the Egyptus Museum in Berlin, Germany. It's definitely my favorite Egyptian piece. I mean, King Tut's mask is absolutely beautiful, but this bust of Queen T, it just has so much feeling in it. First off, it's undeniable that this is a black woman, a quote-unquote true Negro. The beautiful afro, the crown coming out of it, the facial expression. You just see that this is a serious woman. It seems that the bust was edited after her death as well, and her son went with the crown to elevate her to goddess-like status. So she should be always remembered as one of the greatest black queens in history, Queen T.